Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being here again for the Economic Times Women's Forum. Our next session, the economic impact of women in the workforce. For this, I'd like to invite Anki Das, Director, Public Policy at Facebook India, Central Asia and South Asia, who will be in conversation with Avan Dubash, anchor ET Now. Please join me in welcoming them both on stage.
Hi, everyone. Well, let's get right to it. And Aki, talk about the current status of women in the workforce in India. And when it comes to numbers, the ranking by a recent survey is about 120 out of 130 in worldwide, the Indian ranking. Why do you think that is?
So, it's a very sobering thought as economic growth progresses. There is this increasing phenomena of women dropping off from the workforce. And let's just unpeel this data and understand why this is happening. The World Bank put out a study recently, and it was very instructive in terms of what's going on. One of the two factors is, of course, economic, which is as women move up the economic pyramid, they want more meaningful work. And obviously, there's an opportunity squeeze in terms of mobility, in terms of them being able to capture that space in terms of doing the meaningful work. And then there is this dropping off phenomena which then triggers off. The second aspect is really something with women, you cannot unhinge the social from the economic. You just cannot do that. Yeah. And the second factor is what we have struggled with forever, which is our normative factors, our society and our norms. It is the central question is that what is the agency which a woman has? Is her work really valued by the family? There is a study which we in Facebook had commissioned in 2016 with development economics, and what we found is that the biggest barriers to women holding back or dropping off from the workforce those constraints are essentially family and domestic commitments and relative prioritization in terms of what comes first. The second aspect is access to finance and access to capital. The study also showed us that 4 out of 5 women do want to start a business on their own or want to be in valuable economic value-creating roles. But that is just not happening because of this conflict, of these conflicts which we are seeing playing out.
You touched upon some very crucial points, and norms really need to be changed. But you're from Facebook. When social media is used as a tool, sometimes life-changing things can happen. So tell us, what is Facebook doing in this vein to create an impact?
So one is, of course, our own platform, which gives more voice to women and to all people. That in itself is a big effort which we put in every day to make the platform more relevant and be available in multiple Indian languages. In addition to that, there are some very specific, India-specific programs which we are invested in for the long term. So the first thing which I do want to talk about is that looking at the data and looking at, again, where SME is fueling a lot of the economic growth and productivity in our country, we've invested in a national program of She Means Business. The program essentially involves in working with small and medium entrepreneurs to help them build successful business and access global markets via Facebook and build their own brand recognition. The program now has been offered in more than 6 states. It's active in 18 cities. We have created a network of 12,000 women entrepreneurs. So that's something which we've done on the entrepreneurship side. Again, we are a tech company, right? And it's important for us to even look at and understand what is going up in the startup space. So one very interesting data point which we found is that if you look at management control or women-led startups, it's only 9% in India. In 2015, about $5 billion of investment came into the startup ecosystem. Guess the number of investments women-led startups got. An anemic $168 million. So you can see the mismatch, right, in terms of what the inflow is and what is the share which women have. The barriers there, again, this is a network play, and also mentorship is key here. So what we did is that we started this program, which is called She Leads Tech.
Right.
8 months into the program, we've had 100 women-led startups join it, and they have access to Facebook FB Start tools, as well as they get publicity on the platform of their businesses and their websites, plus access to this peer community and mentorship, which is key. There is this other program which he started, which is only recent, which started earlier this year, which really looks at Code for the Next Billion, as to how do you code in order to create solutions for people at the bottom of the pyramid. What is very interesting is that out of the 10 startups which we announced that we would mentor and support, this is a financial assistance program, technical assistance program. Out of those 10, women are leading 5 of those startups. So I think if you create equal access opportunities, women are going to seize that. But I think the power is in the power of the peer networks, and how do you get the message out?
Yeah, absolutely. I have another statistic, and I was pretty shocked by this one. Only 29% of internet users in India are women, 43% men, it seems. So there is that big digital divide. So tell us, how do you think Digital India is helping women to become more successful? Just a carry off of the question that I asked previously.
No, so I think there's a huge asymmetry in terms of internet access. If you look at only 30% of the women who have access to the internet, again, there's a classic fight in terms of access to resources, which women have always fought and struggled with, right?
Yeah.
And 70% of the internet access is completely male, and that creates its own skews in terms of the voice which you have on the platform. I think Digital India as a national strategy is a commendable one in terms of making sure that internet is available to everybody. Multi-language computing is a very, very big factor which will enable that. And also, as I think data prices drop, access devices, as those costs drop, I think it's going to get more pervasive. I think what is happening in terms of closing the gender gap in terms of the digital space, there are 2 things which are very interesting which are happening. One is that the learning community is coming together, and the skills training aspect in terms of how do you teach yourself these new age skills is something which the platform is being used for. We see that on Facebook ourselves. We've created a digital skills hub, and our goal is to reach out to 500,000 people in India by 2020. In addition to that, I think digital transactions are something which are also going to drive internet usage in a big way, both in terms of payments as well as commerce.
Right.
And that, again, is going to bring more women online.
Let's talk about a very pertinent issue, and putting in place a robust sexual harassment policy in the workplace is absolutely imperative, and I'm sure everyone in the audience agrees. What has been your experience in Facebook?
So in December of 2017 of last year, we were the first company to do this. We put out in the public domain our internal workplace policies against bullying and harassment, including sexual harassment. I think it's a very important priority for all companies. We put it out there in order to make sure that this conversation at least starts and people are sharing their experiences in terms of people practices and are learning from each other. I also fundamentally think it's a we job, it's not an I job, in terms of making sure that we have a respectful workplace and a workplace that is safe. It's a commitment which we all have to make, men and women both. The best way in terms of addressing this is making sure that you have policies, you over-communicate those policies, make sure you're training your workforce, and then have enforcement practices which are fairly well published so that employees know what is expected of them in terms of workplace conduct.
And let's talk about, STEM education that we've been hearing about frequently nowadays, an acronym for science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And what about the future outlook for women in the education space, and why is it still that we're seeing that the participation level, even in the workspace, is dropping dramatically year after year?
So in terms of, if you look at STEM education, which is the S&T education, I think if you look at the postgraduate education numbers, those are actually encouraging, because over a period, if you look at the longitudinal data series and the time series, that number has actually improved in terms of women being in postgraduate STEM education and beyond. What is the real problem is the pipeline problem, because I think what we don't do a good job of as a country is that we don't debias our early education, our K-12 education, where we sort of bias our education in a way that women are pushed towards humanities and the boys go towards maths and science. And if we are able to address the pipeline development issues in terms of the undergraduate level, where we are encouraging more S&T education by women and creating that space, I think you will have a very healthy balance. The real challenge in STEM education are the leave rates once they start their careers.
Right.
What we've seen is that year 10, and this is universal, this is happening here, it's happening in China and in the Greater China region as well, that year 10 is a peak, you'll have peak leave rates when women leave. Again, issues the same, lack of sponsorship, mentoring, executive commitment, etc. And in India, what is also very interesting is that in year 1, end of year 1, we are also seeing a trend that women take these leave decisions from the S&T field, which again is not a very healthy sign, and we really need to address it.
Thank you so much, Aki, for taking time out and giving us an insight into women in the workforce and the changes that need to be implemented. Thank you.
Thank you.